welcome to TalkFCB and welcome here to the Champions League. It's Borussia Dortmund against Barcelona, and of course, that calls right here for a tactical preview. In today's video, we are going to be looking at Lucien Favre versus Ernesto Valverde. What is going to happen at the Signal Iduna Park tomorrow? It's all happening. Dortmund have got a lot of good players. They've got a very, very good setup. They love games like this. They live for these kind of games, and certainly Barcelona going away from home. Defensively, we've been suspect, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at how Barcelona can stop Dortmund, but not only that, how Barcelona can go the other way, can get this game won. A massive, massive 3 points it would be. Coming right up, it's the tactical preview. Let's do this. But let's start first and foremost by looking at the team that Borussia Dortmund beat Bayer Leverkusen by on Saturday. They started here in a 4-2-3-1 formation with Berkey in goal, Hakimi, Akanji, Hummels and Guerrero along the back, and Witsel and Delaney holding in midfield with Sancho, Royce, Julian Brandt and our old man Paco Alcácer leading the line. And that there is a very good approach from Dortmund. They love that formation, 4-2-3-1, but I have to say, there's a few things that we have to note there and a few different things that Dortmund do depending on the opposition, and importantly, how those two wingers operate, because they don't operate there as wide players. They really do come inside, they make it difficult for opponents, and we're going to have to be really, really wary of that tomorrow night. Because let me show you here the difference in approach depending on the opponent from Borussia Dortmund. Here are two lineups. First of all, against Union Berlin, they actually lost that game, but they had 74% possession, losing the game though by 3-1. But here is the team on the right hand side with a dominated Augsburg, 78% possession, and they won that game really, really comfortably. But you want to have a look there at the forward line. Look how narrow Borussia Dortmund get, and look how important their fullbacks are. They push on, whether it's Guerrero, whether it's Piszczek on the right hand side, whether it's Hakimi, they all get forward. They're really involved in the build up, and those wide players, Sancho, whether it be Brandt, maybe Thorgan Hazard stays a bit wider, but all of them there coming really narrow, getting nice and close to Paco Alcácer, and look how advanced Marco Royce is. What I want to show you though is the very clear difference between Dortmund against those kind of teams, mid-level Bundesliga teams there, and the real top opposition in Germany. Because if we first of all look at the stats, here on the left hand side is Borussia Dortmund against Leverkusen at home. That was on Saturday. They won that game, like I say, 4-0. And on the right hand side, it's the Super Cup at the start of the season against Bayern Munich, which they also won 2-0. But look at that possession. Dortmund against Leverkusen, they won the game 4-0 on Saturday, but 33% possession. Leverkusen dominated that game, and it's exactly the same against Bayern Munich, 34% possession. The one thing you have to note though from Dortmund, yes, you're going to see in a minute, they do sit back, they really do play on the counter-attack against the upper level teams. What you have to note though is, look at those shots. Yes, in both instances, the opposition have had more shots, but look at the quality there of the Dortmund shots. 9 shots they had against Leverkusen, 7 of those on target, and 4 goals. Against Bayern, just 4 on target from 5 attempts, but 2 goals. They're very, very clinical in front of goal. You won't see them taking on shots just for the sake of it, but when they do see a good opening, boy do they take their chances. And look here at the difference in shape of Borussia Dortmund. This is really, really important, because this is the Dortmund that we're going to see against Barcelona. Because a lot of the time you think about teams coming up against Barca, do they want to allow us the ball? Are they going to try and play with the ball themselves? Are they going to press us high? Dortmund certainly are going to be high intensity, but they are going to sit off. You can see here very clearly how much deeper they are in the field against Leverkusen, and even more deep there against Bayern Munich. The two centre-backs there are very, very deep, not playing a high line whatsoever. And as you can see once again, that forward line there, Sancho, number 7, he's extremely narrow. He's not playing there wide out on the right-hand side. And you look there at Brandt, he's really, really in field, and again, leaving all that space for the fullbacks to get forward. But look at Marco Royce. Marco Royce, for me, is one of the most important players here for Dortmund. He's the one that we've got to keep an eye on, because Paco Alcácer will just drop in, and when he does that, Royce will be so advanced, he'll almost be there, the leading man for Dortmund, and we have to keep an eye on him. That's massive. But of course, it's not all about Borussia Dortmund. We'll come with our own tools to really make things happen, and it's not just about a defensive point of view. You've got to go into this game with the right purpose, with the right attitude to go and win this tie. This here is how we lined up against Valencia on the weekend, and yes, again, you may see some changes in terms of personnel. Will Ansu Fati start in a massive Champions League game like this? And also the same there goes for Carlos Perez. You've got Messi, who may come back. You've got Suarez, who can come back into the lineup. Where are those changes going to take place? But for me, do not touch, under any circumstances, don't touch this midfield. Do not touch the balance there of Arthur Melo, of Frenkie de Jong, strong, the fact they can get nice and close to each other, the fact that we spoke about yesterday, they can all link up in a brilliant, beautiful triangle here. Busquets, Arthur, De Jong, leave that alone. Please, Valverde. What you also have to do for me is keep these wide players. At least one natural winger has to be on the park against Dortmund, simply because of those fullbacks, as we're going to come on to in a moment. And for me, it should be Griezmann or it should be Suarez. We may see both of them, and if we do see both of them, what you're going to have to see here, if Ansu Fati is sacrificed and Griezmann is out on the left-hand side, you're going to have to see him actually be very, very disciplined. You can't have here him going central, then dragging Arthur out. That doesn't work. If you are going to play Suarez and Griezmann together, one of those players, and it will be Griezmann, will have to be disciplined and will have to keep his width most of the time on that left-hand side, and I don't think that should happen. I don't think there we should sacrifice Griezmann. That's not the way that he should be playing. That's not the way that he wants to play, but if they do play together, we may have to see that sort of shape, that sort of discipline against a very, very good Dortmund side. And like I say, guys, I think it's really, really important that we focus here on the wide players in this kind of game. And if you look at Dortmund's team here, yes, like I say, there may be some changes. We look at what they did, though, on Saturday against Leverkusen. We look at that personnel because it will be a very similar shape, and we know what they're going to do in big games. And the same with Barcelona here. If we look at Griezmann out on that left-hand side, Suarez is the striker, and I'm going to go here with Carlos Perez out on that right-hand side just because he works really hard. He can be disciplined. We saw that on Saturday against Valencia, and I think Messi, it is going to be a stretch here to start him in a game like this after no pre-season. It may be a risk here to throw him back in. But if we look here, most importantly, at the defensive side of the game for Barcelona, because against Valencia, we were torn apart, and it all came with this kind of combination. If you say this is Gamero and you say this is Rodrigo, we've got a very similar problem here against Dortmund, but I would say actually with even better players. Marco Royce right now, 2 goals on Saturday. He's very, very confident. And like we just spoke about just now, he gets really, really close to Paco Alcácer. What you've got to do here is have help from your entire team. It's not just about Busquets in this kind of area to marshal that. He has to have help, first and foremost, from midfield. You've got our Frenkie de Jong, Arthur Melo, drop it in where they can to give that protection. What you also have to have here is your centre-backs understanding the threat. So first and foremost, you've got Paco Alcácer, who is going to drop in here. He's just going to drop in there, and when he does that, Busquets is going to mark him. What you can't allow is somebody like Piqué, somebody like Longley, actually to follow Alcácer out. When you do that, like we saw against Valencia, it creates a gap there. Royce will absolutely eat that up. He will love that. If you go and follow Paco Alcácer around, if he goes in there, you follow him there. If Jordi Alba is there and he comes out there, you're going to be leaving spaces in there. It's Busquets' job. When Alcácer drops in, you then marshal him, you mark him out the game, and you leave your centre-backs there to stop the threat of Marco Royce. Because time and time again, he will get into that space. Time and time again, he will be looking for that opening. You've got to have 2 players there ready to stop that Royce threat, because he's massive. He's massive for Dortmund in everything they do. What you've also got to be wary of is the space here between the centre-back and the full-back. That's really, really important, because what you will do is certainly have Dortmund coming forward, you'll have their wing-backs really pushing on, and then you'll have their wide players very, very narrow. We saw Sancho come inside, we've seen Brandt come inside, and what you may then be tempted to do is actually put Semedo in, put Jordi Alba in, and that's fine. You're nice and narrow there. You're shielding the threat there of Sancho. You're shielding the threat of Julian Brandt. But then you're allowing all of that space for the wing-backs. Now, what are you going to do there? If you allow them that space, it's a different threat. If you allow the wing-backs that kind of room, and you don't have help here from the players tracking back, and that's the thing, if you play Griezmann on the left, he's going to have to be tracking there, the full-back back, trying to stop the cross, and look, that's not something we'd be good at. We have not been good at stopping the cross in recent weeks, and if you allow that cross to come in, Paco Alcácer, you guarantee it, will be in the right place at the right time. He will score. However, if you manage to cut off those wing-backs, Paco Alcácer does struggle when he doesn't have the service. We saw that at Barcelona. He's not somebody who's going to create something out of nothing. If he gets the service, he is world-class. He is a stunning, stunning finisher. But you cut off that service, suddenly Paco Alcácer here in the area is starved of chances. But if you put the full-back out there, if you stop the cross there, now you've got the space in between the centre-backs. And that's the real problem. That's what you have to do in this game. You have to have every single player committed and understanding the threat here of Borussia Dortmund. You need your wide players to get back in position. You need your midfield players to get back in here and stop the threat, because you can't be too wide, but also you can't be too narrow. If you go too wide, you're going to let the wide players there in that gap, because they do play extremely narrow, but if you go too narrow, you're going to allow the fullbacks all the room. You've got to get it right. You've got to get it absolutely right. In a game like this, you've got to have your centre-backs there, keeping their shape, helping Sergio Busquets. You've got to defend the space well, you can't go too narrow, you can't go too wide. Everybody has to be working hard. But what you also must do is pose an attacking threat. And this is absolutely vital for me, guys, because yes, you can have a plan for Dortmund defensively, you can stop them if you work really, really hard and you get things absolutely right. But what else you can do? You can dominate that game. You can go there, dominate the ball, dominate the territorial play, and actually keep them penned in. That's what you want to do. You want to go there, you want to get your midfield set up, and that's what I would say about this. That's why I don't want to see Arthur Melo at the team. I don't want to see Frenkie de Jong at the team, because I'll tell you this now, Busquets, Arthur, de Jong, they will run all over Witsel and Delaney. They will. They just absolutely will. Will Royce drop in here and help out? He might do, but that's not going to stop them. Arthur and de Jong can take this midfield of Dortmund absolutely apart, and they can do that. They can dominate the game, and suddenly then, what you're saying to Dortmund is, you've got to get back in your own half. And they will do that. You saw it against Bayern, you saw it against Leverkusen. They will drop back, they will get really, really deep here, and suddenly, when you're that deep in the field, is a different kind of threat. Then, what Barcelona have to make sure they're doing is setting themselves up so that if they lose the ball, they're ready to stop the counter. That's the only threat that Dortmund I see having in this game is the counter-attack. They've got massive, massive players to the counter. Jadon Sancho, absolutely lightning. Marco Royce, also somebody who can really tear you apart on the break, and Julian Brandt as well. And Paco Alcácer again will be there to provide the finish. And that's why it's really, really important that we get this absolutely right in terms of our shape, because the shape is not only about going forward, it's not just about having Suarez here, about having Carlos Perez here and Griezmann there for the attack. It's also about when you're going forward, when you're sustaining the pressure, when you're dominating the game, when you lose the ball, you have to have a shape there that's set up to actually stop the break. And what that means is having the fullbacks here in the right sort of area, not overcommitted all the time. You've got to get your centre-backs nice and high as well, so that if the break happens, if we lose the ball, you can turn that over as quickly as you possibly can. It might be tactical fouls. If you're not set up correctly, take one for the team. Take it out, stop the counter. You've stopped Dortmund there for the time being. But what you've got to do here is make sure that you're in the right areas. De Jong, Arthur in midfield, Busquets holding here, Longley and Piqué nice and high, and basically keep Dortmund in that half. Keep them there where you can see them, where you can stop them, and just be aware there of those spaces in behind. Royce will be on the last man, Sancho will be on the last man, and you've got to be so careful. And that's what these games are all about. They're so finely poised. One mistake, one way or the other, it can break you. It can make or break your game. And Barcelona, they've got to get it right. Defensively, in recent weeks, we've been poor. There's no doubt about that. But going forward, we have the tools here to pen Dortmund in, to keep them back, to sustain the pressure, dominate that ball. And I do believe Barcelona here, if they apply themselves with maximum intensity and full concentration, stay focused, stay concentrated right throughout this game. You'll have to do that to beat this Dortmund side. But if you go for them, if you pen them back there, for me, they can be got at. That Dortmund defence, you can find a way through. And if we have the ball, if we dominate them, if we smother them and stop those counters, Dortmund, we can beat them. So that there, guys, is my tactical thoughts on what should be a very, very exciting game to come. For me, Dortmund have a lot of threats, particularly on the counter-attack. They're set up for this kind of game. They will allow us the ball, but it's up to us then. When we've got the ball, do something with it. Be productive. Have that midfield there who can sustain the pressure and just keep it on. Keep it going all the time. Put the maximum amount of pressure on Borussia Dortmund. And for me, they can crumble. They will crumble if we do things right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, I'll be coming back later. Of course, we will be here for the match preview. I'll see you then, guys. Thank you for watching. But until next time, as always, Visca El Barça.